Good morning, and welcome to part 15 of our study of the book of Ecclesiastes. It says in 1 Timothy 6, verse 10, that the love of money is the root of all evil. Not some evil, but the root of all evil. What is done in this world which is not right is always done for money in some way, for the power to obtain money, for the people to subjugate people to obtain money. It's done something to obtain money. Money is the root of all evil, and perhaps this is why Solomon spends a bit of time on this subject. He talks about money, the 5 things that money causes us to do if we love money too much. He talked about the more we have, the more we want. He talked about the fact that the more we have, the more we need to spend. The more we have, the more we worry about what's going to happen with it. The more we have, the more we lose, often in misadventure or some other way. And then finally, the more we have, the more we leave behind. And he talks about the fact that God has given us 2 things. He's given us the power to obtain money. He's also given us the power to enjoy the money that we obtain. And this is the whole idea, to obtain enough money so that you can enjoy it. And that's really all we need. He talks later on in the first part of chapter 6 about how evil it is to hoard money, to just obtain money and keep it and keep hoarding it. And the picture comes to mind again of Scrooge in the show A Christmas Carol, hovering over his desk on Christmas Eve, 1 candle burning, 1 coal in the fire, cold, but counting his money. And this is vain, Solomon says. This is all wrong, because what good does it do you? You end up leaving it to somebody else who probably will squander it. You need to do goodness with your money. And now he goes on to talk about the vanity, the evil of working all the time for money. And in chapter 6, verse 7, he starts off by saying, all the labor of man is for his mouth. And what he refers to really is the fact that the labor of man should be, and really is, for his necessities of life. In the times when this was written and in the place, it was primarily for food than anything else. But today it's for raiment, it's for fuel, it's for heat and warmth, shelter. It's for the necessities of life, and this is what the main labor of man should be for. The labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the soul is not satisfied. And what he refers to is the fact that no matter what we do, our work, even though it's important and we have to do it, it does not satisfy the soul. It does not give the satisfaction that a relationship with God does. So the first part of these 3 verses is the fact that all the work you do doesn't satisfy you. It doesn't satisfy the soul. And that's what he's saying here, that the labor of man is for his mouth, but the soul is not satisfied. Now Solomon certainly knew about work, and he's not saying man should not work, but work should not be the main reason for his being. Solomon did a lot of things during his day. He says very clearly that in Ecclesiastes 2 verse 4, he says, I made my works great. And in chapter 2 verse 11, he says, all the labor of which I had toiled and tasted, all was vanity. In Ecclesiastes 2 verses 22 to 23, he says, for what has a man for all his labor? His days are sorrowful, and his work hardsome. He's saying that work is important, but it's not the reason and the being for your existence. You have to understand that there's a balance between what you do and what you work and what else you do. And work without God in it is really vanity. If all your whole objective in life is to work, then this is vanity, and this is meaningless. In Ecclesiastes 3, verse 9, he says, "What profit has a man from that in which he labors? For all food and skillful work, a man is envied." In other words, are you working because you want the envy of your neighbors? Is this why you work so hard? What is the reason for being so diligent, so working so hard all the time so that you have no time for anything else? If this is your main reason in life, then Solomon says this is vanity, this is evil, because the main labor of man is for his mouth. The second thing he says is that who knows, or what does the poor man have? For what more has the wise man than the fool? And what does the poor man have who knows how to walk before the living? What he's saying here is that wisdom also is not the end result. Working for wisdom is not the end result either. It's your heart, it's your way you live more than what you know that counts. Dr. David Jeremiah, in his book Searching for Heaven and Earth, talks about a man with the name of Charles Dawson, who in the early part of the century, 1908, discovered an ancient skull in Britain. And this skull came later to be known as the Piltdown Man. It was felt to be a link in Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Another famous British scientist and autonomist by the name of Arthur Keith spent most of his life searching into this and wrote a book called The Antiquity of Man. He spent his life researching, reading about, writing about this Piltdown Man and its significance in science. However, when he was 86 years of age, two men came to his house and broke the news that the Piltdown Man was a fraud. It was a whole fraud. Mr. Keith had spent his life researching and talking about and putting his faith in a fraud. He had trusted in a fraud. The Bible warns about this. The Bible warns about wisdom. The Bible warns about wisdom in Romans 1:22. It says, it talks about those who are wise, professing to be wise, they become fools. In Proverbs 1:7 it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. There is a fact that too much work, is not going to satisfy you. And searching for knowledge all the time, spending your entire time searching for wisdom, is also not the end result of what you should be. There's a balance to strike, and this is what Solomon is saying here, that what more does the wise man have than the fool? What does the poor man have who knows how to walk before the living? A poor man, an uneducated man who knows how to walk properly, knows how to incorporate God into his life, is better off than the wise man who puts his faith in something which is a fraud or something which may be not real. That is evil and vanity. And then he says, better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. So many people spend their life working, planning for the future, planning for their retirement, planning for when their kids are grown out of the house, planning for something that they'll do in the future, that they miss the present. We plan for a future which may never come, a future which may not be ours, It's grasping for the wind. It's planning for desires. It's planning for sometimes fantasies. If only I can get a bigger house. If only I can get a bigger car. If only I have a bigger pension. If only I have etc., etc. We plan for the future. But sometimes the future doesn't come. And it says better to enjoy what we have than to spend our time planning for something, the wandering of the eyes, the planning of desire. Better is the sight of the eyes, what we see, what we have, what we can do right now, than the wandering of desire. This also is vanity and grasping for the wind. Proverbs 28 says, "He who tills the land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows frivolity will have poverty enough." Psalm 118 verse 24 says, "Today is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." There's a story also in Dr. Jeremiah's book with a man by the name of George Young, a carpenter, who wondered about doing things for God, for other people. He reached from church to church in revival efforts. They finally had enough money to build a small house, small piece of land, and they did this. It wasn't very much, but they managed to get this together. And it wasn't long after this that someone broke in, or some vandal set fire to the house, and it burned. George could have been very upset because his possessions, everything material that he had, was gone. But instead, he didn't. He still had his relationship with Christ. And as a result of this, the words of a hymn started to come to him, and he wrote a hymn called "God Leads His Dear Children Along." The chorus of this says, it goes like this: "Some through the way waters, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives a song in the night season and all the day long." After he died, his widow ended up in a small nursing home for poor people, a rundown country poorhouse it was called. When she was later found there, instead of being upset, she smiled and said, "So many of the people who come here don't know Jesus. I'm having the time of my life in introducing them to Jesus. Isn't it wonderful how God leads?" We can be so upset with material things, so desirous of maintaining material wealth, that we miss the benefits of what wealth can give us. We miss the benefits of today. We miss the benefits of what God has enabled us to have, in the same fact that today is the day that God has made. Solomon is not saying we shouldn't work. Far from it. Because work is necessary for our fulfillment, for our being, for what we need to do. We need to work to obtain the necessities of life. But work is not the be-all and end-all of our existence. We have to do things for God as well. We have to do things for our families. And it's better to spend some time with families than to spend all the time working. It's better to do some time for God than to spend all our time working. After all, although we are saved by faith, Revelation tells us that it is by works we may be judged. So what Solomon is saying here, work, enjoy your work, take benefit from your work, but don't have it as being the be-all and end-all of your existence. Enjoy what you do. Enjoy the essentials of life that it gives you, but it is not the reason for your being. And don't look forward to your desires as being the end result either. Don't always look to the future. Enjoy today. God has given you a talent to make money, to do things. Enjoy what God has given you the talent and the abilities to do. Enjoy your work. And live for today. Plan some for tomorrow, yes, but don't spend your whole life thinking about tomorrow. Enjoy today. And that's what Solomon is saying in these. Enjoy your work, but work is not the end result of your being. That is a relationship with God. And that is what should be the focus of one's true life. So we'll go on to the last part of this chapter next week. I hope you'll join me for it. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.